Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. We are officially starting our new tutorial series, Northgate, which many of you have requested in the comments on my previous videos. I've actually been preparing this series for a month or two now, getting everything ready, and today we finally begin. This is going to be a mini-series with around 10 to 12 episodes, where we'll look at everything from creating entrances, building shuttle stations, making coasters, theming shops, designing plazas, and all the little details you've been asking for. But today, we're starting with the preparation for the Northgate project. First, we're brainstorming the inspiration. I've always wanted to build a proper city theme park, something based on places like Gröna Lund and Liseberg in Sweden, Tivoli Gardens in Denmark, and even Blackpool Pleasure Beach in the United Kingdom. These parks are all placed in the middle of their cities, and I've always found it fascinating how they manage to pack so many rides, attractions, restaurants, and shops into such tiny footprints. Everything overlaps, everything sits on top of something else, and yet it still feels believable. It doesn't look messy, it doesn't look chaotic, it just works. That's the magic I want to recreate with Northgate. It's also a challenge for me because I want to see if I can capture that same charm without going overboard. And that's exactly why this project is a bit smaller. I want this series to stay focused. So let's start. We're starting in the main menu, heading straight into Sandbox mode. Then we pick our biome. I'm choosing temperate for this project, and before loading in, we go into the Sandbox settings. I'm not changing a lot here, but I am adjusting the guest capacities and the hunger and thirst multipliers. I always turn these pretty high because I want guests to actually use the shops and food courts I built. That keeps the park feeling active and gives meaning to the restaurants and plazas we'll create later. Once we're done with that, we start the park and jump right in. The first thing I'm building is a third to third grid. This is the park layout, the square, and the exact size I want to work with. I'm placing the grid pieces first just to make it easier, and then putting fencing around the border. That gives us a clean enclosure for the entire park. After that, I'm taking the square pathing and wrapping it around the outside so we get this nice, tidy city block look. With the park footprint set, we can finally move over to building the city. We're keeping this part much simpler because these buildings are only going to be the background of the whole park. You'll see them from inside the park, so they matter, but we're not going crazy with detail like I do on my wonky houses or my full Main Street builds. Think of it as background noise, like jazz music. It's there, it sets the mood, but it's not the star of the show. So as you can see here, we're still adding some nice bits, good shapes, carved in windows, brick wall, and some depth tricks. This little wall carving window technique I've used before works super well. We're also adding basement windows and a simple custom stairway using the stucco wall pieces. But again, I'm not focusing on high detail here. I don't want to waste too many pieces on the outskirts of the park, because the backs of these buildings will be completely hidden. You won't see them at all. In some cases, I might not even build the back of a building, because it literally won't be visible from anywhere. We're also using the resort wall decoration piece here, which look great and scale nicely. Then we trim the windows, and instead of making full custom windows, we're using the Western window set. It fits surprisingly well for this style, and as always, I'm adjusting colors as we go. The whole idea with townhomes or row houses is that they look similar, and that's exactly what we're doing. We build one, get the structure right, and then duplicate it. After that, I tweak each copy with small differences, color changes, a few different trims, maybe swapping some details. So already here, as you can see, two almost identical buildings next to the first one we made. They're basically the same structure, but the color variations and little tweaks give enough variety without blowing the piece count. For the fencing, we're using basic shapes. Basic shapes work really well here because they can scale down incredibly small, and honestly, I couldn't find an in-game fence piece that did what I wanted. So these scaled art shapes were the best way to create that iron spike fence look for the townhouses. After fiddling around with it for a bit and getting the structure right, I move on to the greenery. I'm adding hedges to break up the grass patches, plus a few trees and bushes just to give the street a little more life before we start duplicating anything. Then I bring in the big plaster set and use it to create a proper curve for the pedestrians. It cleans everything up and makes the whole street feel grounded and part of a real city block. As you can see now that we have the footprint of these, we can start duplicating it and we can start changing the colors so we don't get the same repetitive scenic view from wherever we look. It's always nice with a little bit of different style or color that it will eventually give another illusion and it won't look so repetitive the more you look at it. You'll notice there's already a building on the right side here. I built that off camera because it didn't really need a full showcase. It's just a simple concrete building with a bookstore and a cafe at the bottom. Nothing too fancy. On the left side though, I wanted something more charming, a little Victorian style Main Street building that felt neat next to the row homes. And right beside that I'm adding a cinema too, which I think adds even more personality to the street and gives the whole city a bit more charm. The idea here is that all those row houses we built earlier will be spread around outside from the park, while these slightly more detailed buildings help break up the shapes and create variety when you look out from inside the park. I also wanted some taller buildings to add depth and better composition, and these definitely help achieve that. For detailing, I'm using my favorite plank piece again to trim the windows, and then the resort trim piece, the one with the thick edges. That resort balcony trim works incredibly well here. After that, I'm adding some basic theming using the mythology wall set and then creating custom balconies with windows to give the building more character. Under the main archway I add a door, and above it I'm placing one of the window frames from the sorcery pack. It fits perfectly and adds a nice bit of fantasy detail without going over the top. The rest of the windows are just standard pieces, but once the balconies are in place, they look exactly the way I wanted. Then we place the pedestrian curb along the street and add a simple mercantile sign. These buildings won't function at all. They're purely background pieces with random storefronts to sell the illusion of a lived-in city. As we get close to finishing, I add the roofing and start trimming everything so it looks clean from the street. Then I place chimneys on top to complete that classic Victorian silhouette. In the end, I really like how the colors turned out and how the whole build blends with the bigger concrete building on the right. Now we're moving over to the right side of the build, and I really like how this building turned out. It's a classic 90s style urban cinema, the kind you see in a real downtown, and that's exactly what I wanted to implement next to the two buildings we just made. These three together feel believable, like something you'd see on a busy city street with different architectural styles sitting naturally side by side. For this cinema, we're using a lot of the same pieces as before. The classic brick decorative cores and the brick pillars. And that's really what brings this whole structure to life. We're not using too many pieces overall, it's very much the same palette, with the one exception being the Planicoaster windows that fill the gaps between the brickwork. The Western style doors work surprisingly well here too. They have this nice glossy mirror effect that matches the windows and ties everything together. After that, we close everything in with the decorative course piece and add a bit of extra detail at the bottom using the stucco pillar base pieces. Then at the top, we finish the edges with the resort wall trim, which always does a great job of cleaning up the silhouette. Everything just comes together really nicely once we started trimming the building from top to bottom. And of course, no cinema is complete without the big square showcase board out front, the classic light-up marquee you always see at theater entrances. Adding this instantly gives the street that nostalgic downtown vibe. To create the lighting effect, I'm using the Sorcery Pack bulb lights, which work perfectly for that bright vintage marquee glow. We also add a big Northgate cinema sign to finish the look. Finally, I'm adding a large street sign beside it. It might look random at first glance, but it really helps anchor the area. This sign is mostly made from basic shapes with a few decorative pieces mixed in, and once we add the letters to it, it brings even more life to the street. The next thing we're building is a small parking lot between the buildings we've already made. I'm planning to place maybe 2 or 3 more parking lots around the park so the whole area feels like it belongs within a real city environment. To start, I'm using the basic pathing system to lay out a simple square. Then I found these really nice fence pieces that work perfectly as the border. After placing those, I'm decorating and enclosing the parking lot with some hedges, and later we'll add trees and bushes to help hide the area inside the town boundaries. Once the border is done, I'm bringing in basic shapes again to divide the parking spaces. These help mark out the individual parking plots we'll use for the cars. I might download some workshop cars to fill up the lot later, but you can always place your own once I upload the full blank city layout for you guys. You can see here how the basic shape work amazingly well for drawing out the lines and creating those clean divisions. I'm also placing a few lampposts to add more atmosphere. After that, I'm springing in some decals to dirty up the pavement a bit, nothing too crazy, just enough to make it feel used. Then I add a few extra cars, pedestrian paths, and of course a parking lot sign to finish it off. Now I'm bringing in 2 buses for the street, just to make the area feel more lived in. After that, I'm duplicating the row houses again and spacing them out carefully. I'm being very mindful of the piece count here, we don't want this area to get heavy. To help merge the 2 different architectural styles, I built a small connecting wall and add our custom fencing again. Then we create some bus parking booths as well. All of this will be completely polished once the whole park file is finished and ready for you to download. Here I wanted to try something fun, so I made my own little custom tree with their own iron guards around them, like small planter cages. Basic shapes come in clutch once again. It actually turned out really nicely and fits the city feel perfectly. The only thing left to do here is duplicate the planters we placed and add a bit more of that downtown atmosphere. Once that's done, we can finally start layering out the actual park. So before we do anything else, we need to place our template buildings, our template rides, and start figuring out what we actually want this park to have. That's the foundation of the whole series. And tiny spoiler alert, you can see a little part of the entrance down at the bottom, but you'll have to wait until next episode to see how that turns out. The first thing I know for sure is that we need a little corny kids family dog ride on the right side. Whether it ends up being a shooting ride or just a simple dog ride, we definitely need something family friendly in this corner. So for now, I'm marking that out in gray. For a classic city theme park, there are 2 flat rides you absolutely must have. The big wheel and the bump and derby. We cannot have a city park without those 2. A 3rd flat ride might come later, time will tell. I'm also very warm on the idea of adding a suspended coaster. They fit incredibly well inside tight layouts and they look great weaving through buildings, so that's definitely on the list. I'm not sure if it will have a second coaster, maybe not. We'll see how the space evolves. In the center of the park, I definitely want a pavilion or a gazebo, something circular. That could be a flat ride, a restaurant, maybe even a full food court. But I want that classic centerpiece you see in all city parks. We also need a small food court and maybe an arcade or souvenir corner, so I'm placing that rough layout on the bottom right. These blue boxes I'm placing represent midway games. Just small stands will scatter throughout the park to make it feel lively. At the top left, I'm marking out a little lake area where I want to build a restaurant. The plan is to have the coaster run right past it so the guests can sit and watch the train fly by. That interaction is going to look amazing once we build it in a later episode. Alright everyone, that wraps up episode 1 of the Northgate tutorial series. Today we planned out the entire park, set up the city environment, built our background streets, parking lots, and finally put down a rough layout for all the rides and areas we are going to create in this mini-series. We've got such a solid foundation now, and it already feels like this is going to be a really fun project. Next time we're jumping straight into the entrance, ticket booths, fencing, the whole arrival experience, so make sure you don't miss that. If you enjoyed this episode, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what parts of the park you're most excited to see come to life, and if you want to be part of the community, or if you want to chat with me or share your own creations, definitely join the Discord. The link is in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in episode 2. Bye bye.